Good evening, folks. Joe Odo with Citizens Alliance for Better Candidates, our weekly podcast that's probably going to wrap up now that the election is over. So, this is the episode the day after, and I am so blessed to have a couple of great guests with me tonight. Ron Tupa has served in the Colorado legislature and was on the ballot for Congress as an independent in Colorado this year. And Angel Oakley, who has also served in office in the Chicagoland area. And she was on the ballot as a write-in this year. And big, smart people like you guys, I want to hear what your impressions of yesterday. So go ahead, Ron, lead us off there.
Well, for whoever is watching this, I'll give you the Colorado perspective very quickly.
Okay.
So we're a fairly reliably strong blue state. So it was no surprise that Kamala Harris was going to take our state handily. I think she got 53%, 54, something like that. But it wasn't close here. And the Democrats control the House and Senate. I'm a former Colorado legislator from a very liberal area. So I was in the state House and state Senate as a Democrat, kind of reform-minded, and was a reformer. And I unaffiliated from the Democratic Party in 2023 and decided to run for Congress as an independent. And I affiliated with the Unity Party here to gain ballot access. Actually, it was legislation that I sponsored and passed many years ago that allowed people to even get on the ballot. That would have been my bill. But my results here, situation here is probably no different than everybody else who's independent across the country. So I'd be interested to hear what Angel says. But libertarians here do fairly well. As a minor political party, they get anywhere between 1% and 3%, almost reliably every time they're on the ballot. That is no different this year. Every single libertarian that I looked into got pretty close to 1% to 3%. So every single one of them. Independents here usually get between 0.5% and maybe 1.5%. If you can get 2% as an independent, you're doing very well. I set my sights much higher. I had hoped to get something as close from 5 to 10%, because I was out early. I spent some money. I had some name recognition, etc. And in the end, it turned out I got about what typically independents get, 0.5% to 1.5%. I got 1.22%, which is still more than any other Unity Party candidate on the ballot, but well below what I had hoped. So that was the experience here. Independents really didn't do that well. I don't think anybody got higher than 2%, maybe 3% at most. So.
Well, I guess we'll have to come back to figure out the answer as to why. But did you guys have some ballot measures?
Yeah, we have a lot. We're one of the ballot access states for citizens initiatives. So we had probably 14 things on the ballot.
Wow.
Say 10 out of 14 passed, or 8 out of 14 passed a lot. A few failed, but yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, well, Angel, give us a summary then.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Just curious on that number. That seems really high. Is
14 is high.
Yeah, we have a limit to 3 on ours.
Oh, no. It's in our Constitution that allows citizens to actually go to the ballot with state measures. And we had a few constitutional measures that were referred by the legislature, and then the rest were citizens initiatives. We could have as many as they gather signatures for.
Wow. Well, I guess there's some benefits to that, because we had some that got nixed and weren't allowed on because the 3 that made it got put above everything else. So
yeah.
I think sometimes putting the limit there is probably easier for people to digest, but challenging if there's more things that really should be on there and you limit it. So in Illinois, it seems like it's a similar story. We are also a very blue state, and we knew that going into this election. I don't think there was any question it was going to go for Kamala, of course. And we are seeing since 2020 a push out from Chicago to the collar counties. They're becoming far more blue now. where the county that I'm in, DuPage County, for I think over 150 years, it was predominantly red. And then we saw in 2020 a lot of people moving out from the city. And then when you had a lot of those riots going on and just the dynamics in Chicago, we had sort of mass exodus of people that were living in the city that came out, and that definitely impacted the voting bloc. And then they did the redistricting in 2022. So they took the census from 2020, redistricted in 2022. And the way they gerrymandered, they basically took a slice out of Chicago or Cook County residents enough to impact the, let's see, I think 9 different congressional districts take a huge chunk from the city. So those 9 districts are now pretty solidly blue because there's so many voters from Cook County. And we only had in this particular race for 2024, I think we have 4 Republican House members in the entire state, and our 2 senators are Democrat. So very little Republican representation. But if you look at the map, basically all of Illinois is red except for the city of Chicago and a little bit on the color there.
And Ron, they had an interesting dynamic in Angel State this year where they had no independents on the ballot for state, house, or senate.
Well,
Right, Angel?
we had no independents, and we had a couple of third parties that tried to get on, but our ballot access is so restrictive. And we had only one person in the entire state make it on the ballot, and that was Ed Hershey, and he was in the 4th district, and he was supported by the union. So kind of the teachers, he was supported by the unions, and I think that's how he was able to meet the signature requirement. So I thought he'd get quite a showing there for votes, but he actually only got 5%. So I was kind of shocked by that. But I think it actually follows too, if we're looking at reasoning, I think it still follows into that people in very contentious races, like we had so much emotion around this race, they get scared to vote anything other than red or blue because they feel like it's throwing away their vote. So if they care, they feel like they need to put it towards one or the other. So then you see the polarity happening, which definitely gives justification for having something like ranked choice voting or approval voting if you're going to have more than 2 parties on the ballot.
And it's rather disappointing how ranked choice voting fared in this outcome. I think 6 out of 10 went down. So we're moving the wrong direction. I think gerrymandering went down in Ohio because they had a confusing ballot. So the status quo, boy, they are holding on tight.
So when you say it went down, what do you mean by that?
They did not get approved. Citizen measures were on the ballot and didn't get approved. So that's going to make us have to fight harder. So if you guys have just one word impression, I'm going to give you one that keeps jumping out at me today. And that's this word misogyny. I mean, that's a shame to hear that there's still that level of hatred and vitriol that is going to continue, apparently. And I mean, are we really going backwards like this? I mean,
Why do you think we have misogyny?
This is what I'm hearing from people. They always have to blame somebody. So now they don't have the third party to blame this time. Although they were setting the stage for that. Do you recall? Here's another thing. The first time I ever saw the big party ran an ad against the third party. The Democrats ran an ad against Jill Stein. So what kind of threat is that? You should be focused on the ex-president, not worried about this little third party.
They went after Jill Stein because they wanted to make sure, if you look at the Clear Choice PAC, the Clear Choice PAC raised millions of dollars just to keep every third party voice off the ballot. They wanted this race entirely between 2 candidates, and they wanted to make sure that they had vilified Trump so badly that they guaranteed their win. I mean, they went after him with everything they had. And if they could get everybody else off the ballot, then it gave people no other choice other than their candidate. That's how they roll. And
And
they,
that and
they
that
went after
directed
Jill.
their big party to focus on Trump bad guy. We are
Right.
not Trump, and that's all that they ran. I mean,
So it wasn't anything regarding Jill being a woman. It was just solely that Jill was an option that was going to take votes away.
Yeah.
And they wanted to shut that down and make sure that if people were going to vote for a woman, that they voted for Kamala.
and
Yeah,
they
I mean-
did bring the heavy hitters in on that. Lawrence O'Donnell went on CNN and talked about, oh, Jill cost Hillary the election in 2016. Those lies just drive me nuts. Go ahead, Ron.
No, I would just say, so my takeaway, Colorado is a microcosm compared to the national, what was going to happen. And I think the remarkable thing here is this. We were not a state where most of the races were contentious. I mean, we gerrymander just like everybody else, even though we have a citizens initiative that makes it less so. But, you look at how many districts are truly competitive at the state house level, state senate, and then federal level. We have 8 congressional districts in our state, 8. One of them is competitive. So all the rest are not competitive. So 7 are kind of done. I ran in one of the ones that was a fairly blue seat. I would have had no hope of winning. I was just hoping to get, like I said, that 5 or 10%. In the states where people felt their vote could be thrown away, that's where they spent all of the money, either demagoguing against Trump or vilifying Jill Stein for even being on the ballot or whatever, any third-party candidate. But what's remarkable is even in these races where it's not close at all, you're not throwing your vote away if you vote third party, because you have to get so many votes for a third party to even influence the race.
Mm-hmm.
No one should have felt that my vote is could tip the race one way or the other if I go third party. What's remarkable is how few people voted for anybody other than the D and the R, even in races that were fairly safe. In other words, there was no protest vote in the state of Colorado, not a single protest vote. Our Democrats and Republicans combined got between 95 and 97% of the vote when half of my state is unaffiliated. That means that if you're an independent or a write-in candidate or whatever you're going to do, we have no hope of competing if we don't have the money to be able to reach these voters the way the two major parties do. I mean, it's not enough to say there's an option for you that's not the two major parties. Why don't you exercise your option? We give you another choice. They just don't. You've got to be able to fund your races better.
Well, I think that in some ways it was a protest vote because people that were voting R were protesting D, and people that were voting D were protesting R. So in some ways, I think there was a lot of protesting vote happening. It just wasn't happening in the third party category.
Yeah, when I say protest, I usually mean against the status quo. The status quo is you're always going to vote D or R.
Yes, although I think we see it that way, but I think there are a lot of people out there that see voting the opposite party. They don't even look at third party as being an option. They see voting the opposite party as being a protest vote. I did talk to voters that were so angry about the wars that they were going to vote Republican just to punish the Democrats, and they were lifelong Democrats. I mean, they specifically said that to me. So that's what I mean. But I think the general public sees that as a protest vote.
I see.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we had Ahmad in the show a couple episodes back, and he's talking about how the Muslims in Arlington, Virginia, were going to just vote for Trump just because the other guys were exercising that genocide. They were, and we're going to make them pay. Oh my God! So I guess that is a protest vote, but like you guys are saying, that the protest against the status quo needs to be a longer term investment that people see as, look, maybe now your vote may not count. You may not get a win out of it, but it is sending a message to the status quo that we want third participants, and that's unfortunately we came up a little short in getting that protest registered this year, don't you think?
Well, I mean, the fact that the libertarians always get in my state between 1% and 3% because they're always on the ballot. So every year, someone knows there's going to be a libertarian on the ballot, and if they're, fairly right wing or over on the right side, they might vote libertarian and not vote Republican. But a Democrat or an unaffiliated person that would normally vote Republican would never vote libertarian. Same with the Green Party. If you had a Green Party candidate, they're probably going to take votes away from the Democrat. They're not going to take votes away from the Republican. But the fact that you can get 1% to 3%, if you're on the ballot consistently, tells me there is value in being able to have that kind of a presence, the continual presence. But you know how the libertarians are. They're very active. They're very vocal. They're somewhat very organized. And a minor party that's going to try to equal that or compete with that has to have the same. You've got to have a passionate membership that is going to stick around, consistently election after election, and provide the candidates and the money and the wherewithal to be on the ballot in front of the voters. That's what you're going to need.
And they did have the advantage of having Koch brothers underwrite them for many, many years over the. Yeah.
I mean, however it's done. Exactly.
Yeah.
However it's done.
What do you think about having a publicly funded website that's basically that's more like Ballotpedia, that each candidate gets to maintain their own information on there? I mean, Ballotpedia is a little tricky because you have to submit your questions or your answers to their questions, and you have to be verified. And if you don't do it within a certain window, you get ousted. You can't go in and then delete things. I mean, there's some limitations. It's not like it's a free website, so to speak. So what if we had something that was publicly funded, structurally like Ballotpedia, where candidates could go in and completely manage their site, and essentially that would mean they wouldn't have to have a website that they paid for. And then you would have one platform or vehicle for everyone to go to, and you would just encourage the electorate at large to use that as the place to go to get information about candidates. And then it would be up to the candidate to be creating material, but it would allow them a hosting platform, and it would reduce the cost or point of access and understanding how to manage a website and get exposure.
I mean, I think there's limitations on this. My takeaway, my lesson from this election, from someone who's done this many times as a Democrat, is that nobody is going to be able to compete ever in a meaningful way. And I don't mean democracy is served just by having another choice on the ballot. I think you burn people out if really that's your end goal. I mean, I think the end goal needs to be to have a viable, consistent political party where the public can see an alternative to the two major parties. I don't care if it's libertarians, Greens, Reform. I don't care what you're going to call them. But to have that, you need funding. You've got to have funding. So whether you get the Koch brothers on the right, or you get the Democrats and Reid Hoffman on the left, I don't care who's going to do it, but you can't get this done without money. I've come to the conclusion, all of your great candidates, all your great ideas, all your passion, it falls by the wayside if you don't have any funding to equal the two major parties in an election. It just doesn't.
But
And even as close as Dan Osborne came, I didn't see the results.
Remember, Dan Osborne only got that close because he was the de facto Democrat running agained a Republican.
Right.
He was the only one.
Yeah.
So yes, any of us can be that. Any of us
That's
can
true.
be that.
And he also
Yeah.
raised $3 million. He raised more than $3 million, maybe
Right.
$4 million.
They would have spent over $10 million for his race, but it's because the Democrats were supporting him as if he were a Democrat because they were trying to knock off the Republicans.
Yep.
Right, which gets to your point that they don't really identify as independent. It doesn't define what an independent is really, because, like you say, he was running as the alternative to the oil party.
That's all it was trying to knock her off. I like Dan Osborne. I think he had a great platform, and I supported him myself personally, but I wanted him to get in as a true independent. He was lucky that the Democrats did not put up someone, or Dan Osborne might have gotten 10% of the vote or 5% of the vote. That's my point.
Even with the same 3 million.
He wouldn't have gotten 3 million. That would have gone to the Democrats.
That's true, yeah.
And that's really what we see in Illinois. I'm sure it's everywhere, is that even when you're getting put up by the Democrats, they just changed the law so that they can put as much money as they would like from their primary party fund into a primary candidate. So they're picking who they're putting up. So it's an oligarchy in that perspective, right? It's not really a free and fair situation.
Exactly.
It's not that the best ideas win, in other words. You're not taking all of these people and putting them up on the soapbox and letting them speak and saying, hey, they've got the best ideas, they've got a great background, let's go ahead and put them in front of the people and see how they do. That's just not happening.
Right. I think that the bottom line, the takeaway I have is that the public, as much as they say that they're tired of the partisanship and they don't like the dysfunction and they want other options, when you give them the opportunity to put their money where their mouth is, when push comes to shove, 95 to 97% in my state went for the two parties. Even though they all had options other than the two parties, they went for the two parties.
And that means that they're really not independents. They're swing voters is what they are. They swing back and forth between the two. So that's a distinction. If you're true independent, you're more like us who are out there saying, please don't waste your vote on either R or D, But that message didn't quite get through, did it?
I mean, I think a message needs to be sent, whether it's the Forward Party or whatever party in your states, Alliance Party, whatever they are. If you can't establish a beachhead with that third party somewhere that can then grow and become a viable force, I don't know what we're doing here. I mean, my point is to try to present something to the voters which is an alternative to the problems of the two major parties. I'm not saying all of the ideas of the two major parties are bad. I'm saying how they do business is bad.
Right.
It is special interest controlling both political parties, where they're more interested in winning than representing the public. That's why I am not a Democrat.
That's why they call it a duopoly, right?
A duopoly.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I see myself, I've always identified as an independent, and that's because I have voted, I guess you called it a beach ball, but I've voted for Democrats, I've voted for Republicans, I have voted for some third party candidates. I don't know that I've ever even had an independent to select. So I have voted all over the board, and it's because I do look at every candidate. I watch all the debates. I look at their information, and I select before I go into the voting booth based on who I think has the most integrity and would follow their conscience, because I don't really want puppets in there that are just rubber stamping the party policy. But you find that those individuals are often chastised and run out anyway, because if they veer from the party politics line, then they're ousted. And I've had people that I've supported going into office, and then I just get completely upset that when I go to talk to them, they're just giving the party narrative, and they become useless, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Here's my big fear. I'm going to guess we're running out of time, but my big fear is third parties now, minor political parties, independent candidates. We're not really going to have a whole good shot in the next 2 years, and I'll tell you why. If the Republicans keep control of the House, they've already got the Senate, they've got Donald Trump, they've got the Supreme Court. If they keep control of the House, they're going to be able to pass anything they want in the next 2 years. And
it's going to be ugly.
And knowing how parties react when they have this, they go way too far over. They're going to pass way too many things that the general public won't like, and there will be a pendulum swing back in 2 years. But what's going to happen in the next 2 years is all of that money and interest and support that we could be gaining doesn't go to us now. It's now going to go to the Democrats to block the Republicans on going overboard. The pendulum swings like this every time. It swings against the Democrats. It swings against the Republicans. And so I think we've lost that window of opportunity over the next 2 years because of this. So
Yeah, good point. And you know what? Here's something that David Sirota, who you guys may know, who
he lives in Colorado.
Oh, good. So he says if the Democratic Party can get so epically dunked on somehow, not have a massive leadership purge, it's yet more proof that they're nothing more than a party. It's not really a party, it's a cult, he says, whose religion is opposition to change and protection of the dear leaders that they have. So you would think someone should pay the price for this massive failure.
Never happens.
But it won't happen, right?
Never happens.
Money's flowing. These are the two biggest fundraising operations in the world. So the money keeps coming, right?
Yeah.
I think
Angel, what did you run for? You said, or were you in office as an office holder?
So currently, no. And I ran for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District as an independent. And we have a 70-30 swing because of the gerrymandering. So the Republican doesn't have a shot.
Right.
Clearly no shot. And so as a third party or as an independent candidate, I actually had phenomenal response on the ground. Although people told me, they're like, you don't have any chance. I mean, independents don't get anywhere in Illinois. But they were very hopeful. I mean, people appreciated it. People emailed me, said, thank you for running. We were really upset that you were tossed off the ballot. They ended up throwing me off on that technicality of falling under. And so I was removed August 23rd from the ballot, which was the same day Bobby Kennedy suspended his campaign. So it was really a sucker. It was just a gut punch for sort of that independent movement. But, a write-in candidate, so frustrating that the Supreme Court has ruled that they're allowed to have these high barriers to entry. And we really haven't won in court on those cases because they've said that you have the ability to be a write-in. Well, write-in is not equivalent in any way, shape, or form because number one, people don't know how to do write-in. And number two, they don't even report it correctly. I know I had plenty of people vote for me as a write-in, but I'm not sure that they actually filled in the circle, or if they did fill in the circle, I don't know why it just didn't record properly. And they didn't even report out any of the write-in candidate results. So to pretend that that's being equivalent is
ridiculous.
Agreed.
3 minutes left. So give us a summary and where do you think we're heading there, Ron?
Oh, I was just going to say the next 2 years, if you lean to the left, are going to be a tough time. But because of it, the Democrats are going to be getting a lot more support in independent candidates and third parties. And most of that support evaporates and it's going to go to the Democrats now. It's unfortunate.
Angel, give us a summary.
I think that the independents are mobilizing, and I think that we could see a bunch of them across the country in the next election. But again, unless we can calm the waters, there's going to be so much resistance happening on the Democrat side to push back that they will squash any opportunity for the third party again in the next election.
Well, being that we are undefined as independents, I think maybe our opportunity really lies in how do we define ourselves and how do we get people to see that independent could be an option. And there are some things that are happening even in this cycle. We had Good Party, people who were underwriting a bunch of wins at the local municipal level. They actually claim that they have over 800 wins. And then we got Andrew Yang with Forward, even though he, endorsed Kamala, but he is looking for 2028 to get somebody at the top of the ticket. And then there's No Labels, who really is establishment, Joe Manchin type, But these little things, if we can keep building on these, at least maybe we can define, because Kennedy was good, but again, once he left, then again, people are saying, what is an independent, right?
Well, maybe your next program will be, what do the independents do from, this day forward?
Right on. Angel, leave us with something last minute.
Well, I appreciate what you're doing, Joe, and we need to just have more people coming together and talking about these issues. More voices at the table is what's most important, I think, and we'll see where we go from there.
Exactly. So once again, folks, we appreciate you tuning in all these weeks for the Citizens Alliance for Better Candidates. Next week, we're going to talk about how we won nonpartisan redistricting in Virginia and how we can use that as maybe a target for 2031. Yeah, we got to think far ahead, right? Because there are so many gerrymandered states like Ron's and Angel's here that we got to fix. So I'm sure you guys will be on board for those efforts.
Support it. Yep.
Absolutely. And we're going to be doing that in Illinois. We've already got a team of people that are working on initiatives. to do
Good.
that.
And that's next week's show at 9:30 on Wednesdays. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Citizens Alliance for Better Candidates, Joe Odo. Website is bettercandidates.org. Good night, everyone.
Bye.